with this particular report, it looks at an individual's personal attitudes or motivators or their drives or their motivations. And for many years, I really didn't incorporate this second report, but I started realizing something was missing about understanding a person's drive, their personal motivation. Because, you see some people are at work and, they're just basically doing a job. They may not be, particularly driven by the type of work they do. And maybe they're there because, they have that job. But when you understand what really motivates people, then you have what we call really strong employee engagement. So if you have the person with the right behaviors and the right drives or motivations, then you have someone who's operating on all 8 cylinders. And so this is a great report to help individuals know what maybe their calling is. I mean, a lot of people still haven't figured out what motivates them, and there's a lot of kids in transition coming out of schools who think they want to be one kind of career, but find when they get that career or that job, it just doesn't, turn them on. So this report measures 6 human or 6 different motivators or drivers uh, that either, like I said, get people motivated or they're just indifferent to. Now, the research on the report was done by a guy, Dr. Edward Springer, another psychologist, and he wrote the book Types of Men. I mean, obviously that title's not politically correct today, but back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, that's just the way it was. And explains what these 6 different motivators are. And basically, motivators are anything that, well, I'm just going to skip that slide and go straight to this one, that shows or helps people work together. And in organizations, many times conflict occurs not between someone's style, but their motivations. Like you have nonprofits that are, maybe not as concerned about finances and making money versus helping others and giving things away, versus financial planners who are all about making money and return on investment. And that's many times where clashes occur in organizations, as people's values are different than the people they're working with. And so when we understand what those motivations are, then we can, like I said, get everybody rowing in the same direction. So this report, like the DISC report, has a series of graphs, and I'm not going to go in through the report page by page, but I'm just going to cover the highlights and sort of outline those 6 different motivators and explain what it means, if you have a tall graph or a tall line or a small line. And again, this report is not, it's not good or bad. You can't retake it and get a different score. And these motivators, unlike many times your DISC style, does change during your lifetime based on your needs during that particular time in your life. So I've got permission from Sandy to use her report as sort of our outline here, and I'm going to bounce back and forth along with the PowerPoint slides like I've done with the other classes. Now let me just show, again, on the first page of your report, it shows you how strong your motivators are in the 6 particular areas. And there's, all of us usually have 2 that are very strong, and then we have, everything is sort of on a hierarchy below that. And it shows, number 1, your highest ranking, it shows that you're, strong. I mean, it means those feelings are really important for satisfaction on the job, or if you can't find it on the job, we go do things off the job that keep us motivated. Or situational, which, show, you're meaning, someday it may be important to you and other days it's not. And then the other motivators is indifferent. I mean, it just doesn't float your boat. They're, those motivations just don't, affect your feelings or your motivations, day to day. So, and again, there are 6 motivations, and we'll explain what those are here as we go forward. And then I'm just gonna, also show you that, these are rank ordered. In Sandy's case, her aesthetic style is number 1. So the first page of her report is a sort of a descriptor page of that motivation in her life, and we'll explain it. Form and harmony is what aesthetic means, and then there are bullet points that highlight maybe how that motivation is, important to her or displayed in what she does. And I'll again go in more detail as we bounce and forth on the graphs. So I'm going to go all the way, sort of down toward the end of the report to the big wheel. Well, before I do that, let me just show you there's this graph that compares your scores to the national mean. And usually if you're way above the national mean, it's going to be a passionate or a strong driver in your life. And the higher the score is, and I think like 75% is like the highest score you can get in any one particular motivation, but the higher it is, the more significant that motivation is. And just because you're below the national mean doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, all of us are going to have 2 or 3 that are going to be strong or passionate, and the rest of them are going to be below the line. In Sandy's case, she scores very high as aestheticism, which is, when I'm going to say, most Americans have a low aesthetic score, and high aesthetic people are, I would say, and I'll explain here shortly, is more creative or artistic or sensitive to physical beauty. So I'll go in more detail here in a second on that. And then we go to the last page, which is the wheel, just like the disc wheel. And
what's the national mean? Just define that for me.
Well, again, I don't know if the number is 40,000 different people, but that's usually the data range we use to validate the reports.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So anyway, so let's sort of go through this piece by piece, and I'll begin, clockwise up here. And what I'm going to do is bounce back to the PowerPoint slide so you can, have a visual and an explanation as we go through this. And these are sort of the descriptors of the 6 motivators. And so I'm going to begin up here at the theoretical side. And I haven't looked at all of your reports, but I imagine there are many people on the call today who are very high theoretical, because theoretical people love continuous learning and knowledge and truth. And they like to organize information, and depending how high your theoretical score means, is the higher it is, the more comfortable you are with traditional learning methods. It also may mean you have a difficulty walking past a bookstore because you have this need of knowledge that motivates you. And so we find a lot of consultants and academics and training people tend to have more theoretical motivation because they love to learn. And the other thing I left out is the other reason this report is important is understand how to reward people. Now, I don't believe in the traditional carrot and stick motivation, but some people are financially rewarded, management consultants and financial planners and salespeople, they need some sort of financial input in their life that keeps them driven, versus some of us other people are like giving. We love to give away our time and resources to other people. And if you don't give people the right rewards, then it's not going to be, a driver. It's not going to be meaningful to a person. I remember in the military, every time I moved and every time I got a new job, I got a plaque, hanging on the wall. And, at the end of my career, I must have had 3 boxes of these plaques, and they really have no meaning to me. What really is, floats my boat is, well, like I said, is helping others. But so let me go back to here. Theoreticals, understanding truth, motivated to learn. Utilitarian is the drive. There's 2 types of utilitarian. There are people who are motivated by money, and then there are people who have a second type of utilitarian, is people who have a strong return on their investment. And when I say investment, I mean time and financial resources. Utilitarian people tend to be excellent salespeople. We see a lot of CEOs and companies, like these company presidents I've talked about, or I'll talk about, who are driven to grow their business. And sometimes high utilitarian can be kind of, they can be a little stingy from time to time, and they're not really necessarily flashy rich people, quote unquote, but they use money as a yardstick, or their time, because they're thinking, well, if I do A, and is it going to generate B? So, and so that's the type of the 2 utilitarians I'm referring to. Low utilitarian, like Sandy here, who has 32%, is probably more, I would say, charitable than other people, more willing and giving away, and really doesn't need money, or doesn't use money or her salary to measure her success, versus high utilitarian people do. And if a high utilitarian person's in a job and they're not making what they think they should make, then they become dissatisfied, and then you have a turnover risk. So the third one, individualistic, is down here, and it says, and I got it out of order, is someone who's probably very concerned about power and authority and moving up the career ladder. So we see a lot of, independent consultants. We also see independent salespeople are high individualistic. And someone who's motivated is who has a high individualistic score. Titles may be important, promotions are important, and the higher your individualistic score, the more comfortable you are being single as a solo person. We see high individualistic people are politicians. Again, a lot of salespeople. And the lower your individualistic score, this means you're more comfortable working with groups of people, and that power and authority and being in charge may not be as important to you as it is someone who is high individualistic. So if you hire a high individualistic person and they don't feel like, or they feel like there's a dead end, and they're in their dead end job, and they can't get promoted, and they don't have a fancy title or business card, then they become a risk, or a turnover risk. So we covered as theoretical, knowledge and truth; utilitarian, return on investment; individualistic, power and authority and being independent from others; versus low individualistic, is comfortable with groups of people. And then we're going to come back to aesthetic and talk a little bit more about that. Now, and then if you guys want to share what you guys are, or you see a correlation between what you are and what we're talking about, feel free to share. And Sandy and I were talking a little bit before the class, And Sandy is a singer, right, Sandy? And
Yes, yes. Hmm.
and aesthetic people are far fewer in the population. Uh, and I would say uh, only based on all the reports I've done and trainings I've done over the years, uh, maybe 3% of the population have a high aesthetic score. The rest of us have low aesthetic scores. And an aesthetic person is someone, as I said, is more sensitive to form and harmony, and it could be physical appearance, interior designers, people who love to travel and see the world and enjoy architecture. It could be music. It could be crafty type things, but they're very much more in tune with their physical surroundings. And like I said, some people it's how they decorate their house. For some people it's their musical ability. And so if they can't find that at work, what happens? We go find it and do it somewhere else, right? We have our off time activities to meet our motivations many times. So let's just take a pause here. Anybody wanna say anything, or tell us what you are, or what?
I want to, I'm sure I would like Sandy. This is Mary. So because I'm sitting right up there with you, a little over 60% in aesthetic, and then theoretical, and then the others kind of fall off. And I'm not creative, not artistic, I can't figure out, they're not musical, so I don't know what it is, but it seems okay.
Yeah, and again, aesthetic is probably more diverse, and it just shows itself in different ways. And uh, like I said, for one person it was photography, and a person in my last month's class, she's a like HR director, and she has for a company, and she had a super high aesthetic score. And I said, wait a minute, we don't find very many HR people very creative. No, I'm kidding here. So uh, it turned out that she was a creative. She was a clothing designer on the side, and she had a side business selling products that she had designed. So sometimes, like me, which I do what I love to do, and it meets my motivations. But some of us, if we're not, getting that motivation on the job, we're doing something else to give us that enjoyment in life. So anyway, thank you. Anybody else?
Ray and I are both high aesthetics as well. In fact, I think we had the same score. So that's kind
That's
of interesting
interesting.
that most of us in this group are high aesthetics.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, that is.
that is a shift. I mean, maybe that's why I like everybody so much in this class versus all the high utilitarian people I've been training who are so bottom line oriented.
So
Uh,
you,
I'm
I'm
not sure
sorry.
what happened on this test because also my second highest score is utilitarian, and that's just the furthest thing really from where I'm at. So I may need to retake this thing or something.
Interesting. Yeah, and yeah, so yeah, but usually most of the time it is pretty accurate. But these needs change from time to time, and if you're in a rush when you take this report and you're like, oh, I got to meet the deadline, then you might get your scores may be a little bit skewed versus when you take this report when you're calm and relaxed. So, but there's a lot of, there's the way that all those questions you answer, see, there's a lot of duplicate questions to ensure that we get pretty close to the right scores. So,
Right, you were talking about us being high aesthetics in this group, but think about what all of us do for a living. We all design training programs and off-sites and learning events and organizational activities and impacts, and so maybe that's where where the four of us, where our design or creativity really shows up.
yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I've never thought about that before.
I always feel like my trainings, I'm throwing a party. I'm having a party, and I want it to be really nice for everybody, so we need to have markers and name tents and some food and drink, and it needs to be a fun experience. And
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, well, maybe that's my problem because I'm a low aesthetic and high utilitarian. And, I'm like, conservation and not, I don't mean ecological conservation, but I mean being, conservative and not wasting clients' money and time. So, yeah.
You sound like my husband. My husband is a utilitarian. So number one, he never wants to spend any money. And why do we need like new furniture and a new this or a new that? And I have helped him to be a little bit more socially conscious because we've been going through and doing our charitable contributions at the end of the year. And he said I made him a better person because he'll actually now give to charities.
Yeah. Well, that's a excellent point because high utilitarian people can be cheap. And
I used to call him cheap something, cheap. I can't say the word, but now I just call him frugal, and he likes that better.
Yeah, frugal. That's a better word. And so, like I said, we're all motivated differently. And so, yeah, a high utilitarian person struggles with giving away of their resources. And, in Sandy's case, her second motivation is social. And so, Sandy, I'm sure you're much more generous with your time and money and everything because you're high social and you like to be involved in helping people and helping groups and you do it in a very creative manner, it sounds like, versus a high utilitarian. It's like, when they see a homeless person on the side of the road, they're thinking, oh, gee, what a bum. If he just get a job, he wouldn't be homeless, right? Versus a high social saying, well, let me pick this guy up, take him home, and give him a meal. And so, we just look at, and then again, it's like this is where conflict occurs with people and organizations. Like if you have part of your group's high utilitarian and part of your group's high social, there's going to be, the big conflict between those groups of people, probably more than the other ones. And again, going back to Donald Trump and maybe Adolf Hitler, we're probably, I'm sorry, super high individualistic, very low social, and sometimes that's here again. I like Donald Trump. I mean, he's ruined it for me because I always talk about Donald Trump before he ran for president. Now I gotta find a new pitcher to pick on, or a new celebrity to pick on, and so it's that's where these conflicts occur. And when you're coaching someone, this report's really critical because, it's like the CEO that called me up, said he made all the money that he ever needed in his life. Well, he was like maxed out over here, high individualistic, high utilitarian. And that just told me, well, he's certainly not going to be happy in a nonprofit, giving away of his time and money. So, you have to find a career path that these people are going to sustain energy in. So, to me, this is all very fascinating, maybe boring to y'all. But again, social is helping people, giving them your time and your resources, eliminating pain and suffering. And I'll show you, for example, we have a majority of school teachers who are high social people, at least based on, working with one county school administration. All right, traditional is also a very interesting motivation, and is the last one on this wheel. High traditional people have a very finite, specific set of rules that they see. I mean, it could be, extreme, and I don't want to be political, but it could be, for example, the values could be faith or religion. Some people see their place in the world based on their religious beliefs. And it could be political. I mean, versus, some people are so calcitrant about their political beliefs. Or it could be patriotism, serving the country. And it doesn't mean all, military people are going to be high traditional. I mean, they're all over the map in the military. And if you're low traditional, it just means you're just not as restrained with your way you see yourself in the world. It doesn't mean all the Baptists are high traditional and all the Unitarians are low traditional, but it just means you're more strict as high traditional, believing in a set of rules or values, versus low traditional, more open and accepting to different styles, different ways of doing things, and maybe less judgmental from time to time. So those are the 6 motivators, and any questions on those? I know that's sort of a brief overview, but that's